Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so excited that you're here because we've got a great guest that we're going to be talking to. Rochelle is here. Rochelle, how are you?
I'm doing amazing. Thanks for having me, and welcome, Michael. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I got to say this first off the top, and that is, if you have ever been told, you should write a book. And so you say, yeah, I got lots of stories. I've got a great imagination. I can write a book. And so you take a piece of paper or you sit at your computer and you look at your hands and the keyboard and go, okay, now what? I have no earthly idea what I'm going to do next. I can't imagine. And the guest that we have on today is he's a very learned man. He's got a master's degree and obviously a bachelor's to get his master's. He worked in the political arena, and I was joking with him before we began because he worked in politics for like 20 years. And I asked him how many non-disclosure agreements he'd signed over time, and he has no earthly idea. But he is also a writer. He's got a new book out. It's called Tree of Liberty. It's the second book in the series, and we're going to talk about all that and the process, just in case Rochelle would like to write some book someday about her experiences here. Michael, it's great to have you here. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Kevin. Thanks for having me. And Rochelle, great to see you again.
You as well. Thank you for joining us. I'm actually excited because I have been told recently that I should write a book about my life, and that comes with so many things.
Perfect timing. Here we go. We're all going to learn how to do it.
Exactly. Well, let's briefly talk about your political career. And you were a candidate, and you were help people get elected, and you worked on teams and stuff. Some of them are very famous. We don't need to go into who, but some of them were elected, some were not, and it was a marvelous experience for you, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, and early on in my life too. I'm talking like 18 years old, out volunteering for candidates that I believed in. In fact, my earliest experience was at the Lawrence County Fair when I was just 12 years old. Met a governor from Arkansas who was shaking hands, running for president. And that kind of was the minute the bug bit me and said, boy, this is electric. I want to be part of this. And so I stayed home from school in 1993 to watch the inauguration. That's how excited I was, even though I had, still 5 years from being able to vote. And it carried me all the way through till 2019, 2020. And then it was time to set down my professional running shoes and pick up a keyboard instead and write about those experiences.
And I will tell you, and because it's obvious that it was Bill Clinton, he would be on my bucket list of people I would love to interview and talk to and stuff, because I thought that he did a very nice job, but that's just my opinion. But you've been around these people. What's it like because a lot of people have not ever been in that world to be able to see, you see these people on CNN and the MSNBC and the Fox News and stuff, and you see their faces and stuff, but you don't really get to meet them or know them. What's it like to be traveling in that world?
Well, I think that they come in different species. There are certainly the D-listers who, when you're around, they're just like anybody else. They don't have that air of confidence or magic. They, in fact, might be a little awkward to talk to. You might find yourself wondering how I can come up with the next topic we could discuss besides the weather. Then there's the middle group of average politicians who have a lot to talk about, spend a lot of time preening themselves, probably not listening half the time you're speaking to them because they're on their phone or they're thinking about something else. So they don't really make you feel seen. But then there's that elite class of leader that when they're talking to you, like the whole world shuts down because you feel like you are the only person on earth that exists alongside them. And those are the types who end up becoming governors and presidents and vice presidents because they have that charisma, they have that it factor, they have that electricity that just electrifies and consumes an entire room. And when you're around those folks, you immediately know they have the it. And I've been around just a handful of those folks in my life, and many have gone on to do amazing things, others have not. But that's the type of thing that really sets them apart. They have that magical charisma that allows them to really, connect with people in such a way that makes people just feel seen and heard, and it's authentic. It's not rehearsed. It doesn't feel fake. It really feels genuine, and that's, I think, what sets that elite class of political leader apart.
Are they really interested? I mean, are they interested in serving?
They sure make you feel like they're interested in you. Maybe not always, but they certainly make you feel that way. And I would imagine that you think about someone who's run for governor or senator or president of the United States, how many hundreds of thousands of people they might speak to in the course of their career, and how many times they have the same conversation or asked the same questions by people, or someone says the same thing. So they start to come up with a bit of a canned response to those interactions, but it's when they make it feel authentic and like it's the first time they've ever been asked that question, and it feels like it's the first time they've ever been asked that question, that really cuts through and makes you feel special. So
That's a real skill, isn't it?
it is indeed. It is indeed. To not be bored by, and politicians have to give the same speech thousands of times, hundreds of times. To not be bored in giving it the 99th time or the 199th time is an extreme challenge. It requires a lot of rehearsal and a lot of, and you can see it too. I mean, in the campaigns, when you see a candidate's bored of their own stump speech, it comes through. They don't even laugh at their own jokes at that point. So I've seen that again and again. They're going to lose. So I think that's where it really, you can see the different levels there. But people, I think it's changed a lot in the last 20 years. There's still a lot of authenticity and care about why people run for office and get involved. I would not say that it is all become jaded yet, but it's certainly becoming more and more people as seeing running for office as a means to an end, or it's the next thing they're going to do. And so they themselves may not be as interested in having an effect on people's lives as much as they are the title, the specialness of being in that role. And I think that also comes through at times. And this part of why I write about this is we're starting to see fewer and fewer people who are authentic leaders, who are actually running and care and are genuine about why they're trying to do this work. And instead, there are more and more people coming along who just rehearse the lines and play the role of political leader. But at the end of the day, they're just there for a title. They're there for, it's the next thing in their career they've decided to do. And I think we all suffer because of it. So it's definitely a theme in my writing and something I'm exploring with some of the characters.
One of the things that I like to kid Rochelle about is that there are older actors and stuff that have been in movies and stuff. And so I'll ask her, and Rochelle, do you know who Robert Redford is? Oh,
I
Lord.
might. I might.
He was in The Sting, and he was in a bunch of movies, but one of them was The Candidate. And in The
Never seen that.
Candidate, he did exactly what Michael was talking about. It was like he was in the back of a limousine talking about doing the same thing. And then he won, and he looked at his campaign manager and said, "Oh, now what?" Because he was used to campaigning, but he had no earthly idea what contribution he was going to make or how he was going to get that done. And so I thought that was funny. But anyway, thank you for restoring my faith in humanity that you know who Robert Redford is, because he's still with.
You're welcome.
We play this game, at times we like listen to 80 songs with different groups of people, and like I'll make them guess who it is. I had someone guess AC/DC for Queen the other day. So it just shows you like, oh my goodness, how I'm aging myself these days. But no, that story about Robert Redford and the Candidate is actually part of the inspiration for What It Takes to Kill a Bull Moose. I love that movie, and it is that transformation that his character goes through. He is an idealistic, young, charismatic, I'm going to change the world candidate at the beginning, and his pursuit of power changes him. And that's a theme I'm writing about, is how does the pursuit of power change folks? And it definitely changed him. And he just started repeating the same lines, and he starts going crazy listening to himself talk. He doesn't even know what he stands for anymore by the end of the movie. So yeah, it's a great example for what we're talking about today.
Well, and so you've been through it all. You've been around winning campaigns, losing campaigns, and I can only imagine what it's like to lose a campaign. It's like nobody likes me. They don't like me enough. Or winning, it's like I'm on top of the world and I think I'm all that in a bag of chips. And in both cases, they're wrong. But in any event, it's great to have you here. Now, you spent 20 years doing that. You were a teacher, and then you spent 20 years doing political stuff. And then you decided to follow your heart, follow your passion, and start writing. How did that come about?
Yeah, I always enjoyed writing, and the creative expression that writing brings to me. It's therapeutic at times. It's cathartic. It's enjoyable for me to write, and I actually forgot how much I love creative fiction writing, because I've been writing nonfiction and persuasively for 20 years, pretty consistently. So, and it's a question I get asked: why write fiction? Because there's a lot more market these days and money in nonfiction. I'm like, well, I won't write it off, pun intended, but I will say that for now, I really enjoy writing fiction. And it came about because, when I was teaching, there was an election in 2004, the results of which were disappointing at the time, a far cry from, the elections we have today that are far more, paralyzing and really, the more partisan. Even in 2004, I found like something was missing. And so I sat down to write a story about that. I was teaching at the time, and it quickly unfolded into, 100,000 words story. And I shared it with a colleague, and they read it, and they didn't have the heart to tell me it was bad, but it was bad. And so I put it in a drawer, and, just moved on with other things. And in 2016, I looked at a couple things that were happening in the world. Namely, we had an election happening again where, the country was not very excited about the two candidates, which was a theme of the book I had written. And so I went back to it, I pulled it back out, and I did some editing and called another friend to read it. And they read it and said, oh, this is okay. It could use a lot of work. And so once again, I thought, okay, I don't have what it takes to do this. But I did start to read books on craft and books on how to publish. And so in 2021, a major event at the end of the original book happened on television on January 6th. And that's where I was like, maybe I am either psychic, or I have my finger on the pulse of kind of where politics is headed in 20-year chunks. And if the latter is true, there might be some benefit for me using fiction to both entertain and inform and educate. And so I really committed in the end of 2023 to trying to get that story published and written. And I discovered that the number one advice is never publish your first story. So let's start there. Your first try at writing is going to be bad, because you're going to be exploring who you are, what your voice is, what your themes are. You're going to make a lot of mistakes structurally. So they tell you that you should not publish your first work. And secondly, publishing as an author is one of the only careers that's really judged by your rookie season. Like, people will read your first book and then decide if they want to read anything else you ever write again.
That
Publishers will.
hardly seems fair.
It doesn't seem fair, right? Imagine if quarterbacks, like, if they crapped out their first season, they're done. Or
There've been a lot of them,
musicians.
by the way.
Yeah, no, if musicians, fail at their first album. So there's a lot really riding on your first debut piece. So you really have to get it right.
And
So
oh well, before we continue, Michael, I got to take a quick break. And John Verico has got a question that we're going to answer when we come back, which is, how do you tell authentic politicians from the ones who are faking it? And I suppose it's like kind of having. Did you ever see Harry Met Sally?
yes.
The scene in the cafeteria.
Yeah. Yep.
When she fakes an orgasm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the lady down the road said, "I'll have what she's having."
Yeah.
I think that's the nature of his question. So we need to take a I'm so bad. We need to take a real quick break, and we'll be right back in just a second with Michael Fedor, and he's got a book out. It's called Tree of Liberty. It's the second in the series of the Bull Moose Party. I'd love to know how you came up with that name, and we'll be right back. Are you looking for a powerful way to grow your brand while making a real difference? Well, Positive Talk is the perfect platform to align your message with inspiration, hope, and meaningful conversations. By sponsoring Positive Talk, your brand will reach an engaged audience that values positivity and connection. People who want to support companies that share their values. Take this opportunity to showcase your business in a space that uplifts, inspires, and creates lasting impact. Don't wait. Email me, Kevin at kmmedia.pro today to learn how you can partner with us and spread positivity while growing your brand. And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, and Rochelle's here. And Michael Fedor is the author of the hour. He is had quite a life. You're going to need to write a whole bunch of books about the experiences that you've had. Have you thought about doing a biography yet?
I'm not old enough. I might have enough gray hair for it, but no, I think I need maybe in the next 20 more years of living, then I'll sit down and write a memoir. But this is my notebook where I keep all my book ideas, and there's a whole 2 pages in there. So don't worry, I've got plenty of writing ideas before I try to bore people with my life story. It's okay.
And the latest book that's out is a political thriller. It's Tree of Liberty, and that came out in November. I believe there was something happening in November, early part of it last year, that a lot of people were either happy or crying at one point in that day. So it came out on Election Day, I should say.
It did, yeah.
And congratulations on that. Was that a plan?
Was planned originally. I had intended for most of the story to occur in the original book, What It Takes to Kill a Bull Moose. And when my editor and I went through it, it was just too long. And so we talked about breaking the book up into some logical pieces. And so the story got broken up into 3. So What It Takes to Kill a Bull Moose came out in June. Tree of Liberty came out on Election Day in November. And we're planning for book number 3, The 9-Hour President, to be out this May. So that's at least the first 3 books in the series, and more to come.
Congratulations. That's really cool. And let's answer John's question real quick. How do you tell authenticity from fakedom?
Yeah, so I think it's really easy. Watch how these politicians treat the people around them. Watch how they treat their staff. Do they treat them with respect? Do they treat them as individuals they care about? How do they treat people when the cameras are off? If you're so lucky to be around these politicians when the cameras turn off and they don't think anyone's looking, see how they treat people. If they're screaming at people, if they act like they have to be catered to, then chances are they're one of the fake ones. But if they treat people like real human beings and they don't think too highly of themselves, and they're willing to get their own coffee, and they don't care if their hair's just perfect, just right, they're probably one of the real ones.
And I think that is a bigger thing about life, because I've always felt like if I'm going to work with somebody, I'll take them to lunch, because I want to see how they treat the staff, that and the hostess and the waitress and the bus person and stuff like that. If they treat them with respect and kindness, then they're worth working with. If they treat them like they're subservient to them, and the entree was late, or it was a little cold, or whatever it was, and they can't be nice about it, then I won't work with them.
I think that's exactly right. There was a candidate for president. I won't say their name, but I was at an event with them before they were running for president, and they were standing in a corner of a room by themselves, not talking to anybody, and just being awkward. All these other people are having conversations, and they're like standing at their own table, drinking alone. It's kind of like they're just either a misanthrope or an introvert. I'm like, boy, they're in the wrong business if they're in politics. You can't hate people or hate being around people if you want to be a politician. So,
Oh, and how did you come up with the Bull Moose Party?
that's a great question. So that did go back to the 2004 election. Even then, I was feeling that the two parties were kind of missing the moment. In 2004, they were talking past each other. I felt like they both had run towards this like ultra investigative state, this intelligence state that wants to spy on its own citizens, and I felt like that was not something the parties ought to be doing or embracing. And I'm a student of history, and I just somehow latched onto this story that's often forgotten, that in 1912, Teddy Roosevelt comes out of retirement as a former president to run for president again because he's mad at the job his handpicked successor, William Howard Taft, had done. He basically dismantled the progressive reforms, the busting of trusts and things that Roosevelt had done in his second term. And so he picks up the moniker of the Bull Moose Party, the Progressive Party. They end up calling it the Bull Moose Party when all's said and done. And it was fascinating because it's the last time a third party has won electoral votes, electoral college votes. A party has won, in fact, not just any, but a significant number. I think it won something like 86 electoral votes in that election. And I found it fascinating that we don't talk about it more. And it wasn't a centrist party. And it was only around for a cycle or two. Most of the Republicans who became Bull Moose went back to being Republicans after a couple years. But I'm really fascinated with this idea, and I still think it's very true in this moment we're in. Many other democracies have multi-party systems. We continue to have a duality, a duopoly, where these two parties control the landscape. And I'm curious what would happen if there was a third major party that could come onto the scene, and what would it do if it pulled equally, not just from one party, but pulled equally from both, and how would it change the political landscape, but also change the dialogue, change the conversation, change what we're talking about and focusing on with our elections as a nation. And so that's what I've got really excited also by the imagery of the moose. I think it's strong. I think it's exciting. It's interesting. And it's why it's on the cover of the book. People are always drawn to that cover. They love it.
It's a great cover. And by the way, who did the illustrations or the pictures for both of the books? Was that you?
That was me. Yeah.
Good for you. You're more talented. As a matter of fact, you're so talented that Brichelle, he is a trivia champion as well.
That's true.
That's actually really cool.
People don't play trivia with me anymore.
I can see why. I mean,
Right.
you have so much knowledge.
Yeah, it's not fun for them.
Your job is now to come up with a trivia question that we can ask Michael, and of course, now you're going to come up with some musician that nobody's ever heard of from like that's
last year.
Last year.
No. I like older music. Anything
All
pretty
right.
much after the 2010s era. It's just not my thing, the newer music. I still listen to all the old school stuff. So
That's great.
And so, Michael, you were sitting down and you wrote the first draft. What made you figure that you could do better to go to a second draft? Because a lot of people would say, well, there's the garbage can, and that's where that goes. And now I'm done. I'm apparently not suited for this. What was your thought process?
So I was listening to a lot of podcasts about writing, about marketing, or about publishing commercially viable fiction. Novel marketing podcast was one in particular, and authormedia.com, that I spent a lot of time talking to a community of other authors who were independent authors and trying to find their way. And it was through that dialogue that I found my confidence to explore this. And I think that's the first thing that probably interferes with most people from trying to go down a publishing route, is that lack of confidence that they are good enough to write. And that self-doubt was still with me, but I decided to sit down at a blank screen and commit myself to trying to write a really viable story and just see where it went. I just kind of opened up to possibility, and sat down and just started writing. Perhaps there was some foolishness in that, because there are certain things you need to do. There's story structures, like, the snowflake method or the hero's journey. You have to really structure fiction in a way that people can follow the story. So, I started to learn a little bit more about commercially viable fiction through the process of writing, but I still had the confidence, because while I was writing, I was enjoying the story myself. I was excited to discover what was going to happen next. And because I write thriller, I love putting the twist in. I love trying to, slowly reveal different clues along the way, as well as putting in a lot of distractions, to try to throw the reader off. And by the time I finished, it was 160,000 words. It didn't come quickly. I got stuck in the middle, around Christmas that year. And so I just set it aside and picked up another story, at the suggestion of a friend who said, if you're stuck, try to write the prequel. Try to go back and write what's happening before your story starts. See if you can't just find some excitement there. And that actually worked for me. Ended up writing a novella of about 30,000 words. It was a prequel to the story, and it became what's called a reader magnet, or a reader cookie. Just basically something I can give away on my website that gives folks a taste for my writing style and an indication of, if you like this story, then maybe you'd like to buy my book. And so for me, that was the right way to go. And that also kind of broke the dam of writer's block and gave me that ability to get back into the story and get excited about it again, and start writing. And it was the discovery that it was also a science fiction story, a speculative fiction story, that helped really unlock the story for me. Because once I committed to setting it in the future, everything else unfolded naturally as to how it was going to come together and what the major driving plot points were going to be.
And speaking of which, if you would like to get the free copy, did I say free? Michelle, did I say free? Really? Free?
I think so. You do that.
I know. Actually, Michael does that. And by going to his website, Michael Fedor, and it's Fedor books.com. And that's books with an S. And if you look for, hey, it says free right there on the free book. If you go there, and you can download the free book, and you can get the preamble to the major story, and that would be, thank you for offering that. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go one step further. I put a coupon code in anticipation of our interview today. So if you go to the shop and you buy What It Takes to Kill a Bull Moose in the ebook on my shop before the end of inauguration day on Monday, and use the coupon code positive, you'll get the book for 99 cents. So $9 off the ebook. As a thank you for listening to your show, and as a thank you for giving me a try on as an author. Got to do it through my store, though. MichaelFedorbooks.com. What It Takes to Kill a Bull Moose, the ebook. Use the coupon code positive, and you can download that book for 99 cents.
And I want to thank you very much for that. And because as we all know, the inauguration is Monday, and it could be the last day any of us are on the planet. Okay, I'm sorry. That's just me. So,
Kevin, it won't be that bad.
Oh, yeah, I know. I really hope I'm going to be underneath my house that day. So we
You
need
can
to take
start
our
planning your vacation home in Greenland. It'll be good. Ski chalet.
Yes. You know what's interesting? Never mind. I can go on. I need to take this break, and we'll be right back. We're talking with Michael Fedor. He's the author of The Tree of Liberty, a couple of more books, and he's a budding author that's going to have a ton coming out. So we will be right back in just 1 minute.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And Rochelle's here, and I'm going to teach her. I'm not going to teach her a thing, but you are, Michael, because what I want to explore now is your writing process. I've talked to a lot of authors, and some of them come up with a blueprint or an outline of everything they're going to do, so they know the basic premise of the book all the way through. Some take their character structure and they make three-dimensional characters before they even begin, and then set them loose. What is your process?
Great question. So I definitely, first and foremost, am what we call a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants. Blank page, don't know where I'm going, and just start writing. I like the natural flow of that, and I don't mind the heavy edit that has to happen, because I've heard it told this way. I don't remember who said it, so I can't give the proper credit for the quote. But the first draft is the author telling the story to themselves. The second draft is the author telling the story to the reader. And the third and every other draft after that is about making it commercially viable and something people would want to buy. So, I come at the process of, I have a general outline about, story structure, where the story is going to begin. And I have some notes about some major, plot points, especially if it's a hero's journey story or if it's a Hollywood beat story. I know kind of where I think I'm going to go. But naturally, what ends up happening is I go down different paths. I explore different scenes. New scenes pop up. And so maybe my writing is a little unconventional in that way. It's not going to have, just 16 beats to the story. It's not going to be formulaic. And for me, that's okay. I feel like I'm writing what will work for my audience. And, I can understand what they're looking for in terms of the pace and the story. Some authors will, draft a complete outline. They'll know, every challenge their main character is going to go through. They know every scene that they need to write, and that's great for them. That's not how I write, though. I definitely am writing each chapter from a blank page, and sometimes chapters don't work, and I don't delete them. I just put them in a folder for the next book or two down the road.
Do you ever surprise yourself? It's like, oh, I didn't see that coming.
Absolutely. I get totally. And if that happens, it's when I have a 4,000 word day or a 5,000 word day or a 9,000 word day, because, I just get excited. I discovered something about the story. Just happened to me last week with the 9 Hour President, and said, oh, that's exactly how this is going to work. Okay. So now I'm discovering the story. I'm telling it to myself for the first time. And that's exciting for me. That's really like part of the joy of writing for me, is that discovery.
And because of the number of people that I've talked to that are creative people, and they tell me that there is inspiration involved with what they do. Do you ever feel like the writing that you're doing, it just flows off the page, that you're not even really in control of a pen, that it's just kind of happening, and it's like Paul McCartney in music. He wrote Yesterday and in his sleep and stuff. And there were lots and lots of authors that have told me, yeah, I don't know where it came from. It just showed up. Does that ever happen for you?
Yeah, no, it totally did. And one character in particular, Ziggy, is a combination of a lot of different kind of archetypes. She's a sentient AI character. Again, came into the story once I realized it had to be set in the future, and set into the future 20 years at a time. I was reading a book about, like, you know, when is sentient AI going to be in our future? And it's not 100 years. It's probably the next 20 to 30, where it has some kind of level of self-awareness. And so I really played with this idea and made this character as alive and as have emotions and reactions as any other character in the book. And once I discovered that, her scenes became fun to write, because she's an AI character on a screen. So, like, if they're talking, like, she goes to Denver to go visit a character, well, on the screen she's got her snowsuit on, her puffy earmuffs, she's ready for the slopes. I mean, she's an AI character on the screen. She's not going skiing, but she loves to dress the part because she has unlimited wardrobes that she can have. And a second later, she's in an office and taking notes on a chalkboard. So it's really fun to play with that character and to, like, explore that. I also had Intrigue of Liberty, another exciting moment where I, like, said, well, what if this technology goes to the next level and she can be in the room with them? They go to this place and suddenly this technology allows her to be a projection. That was exciting to discover. That just happened because I was writing and said, what if, and stumbled upon it. And those are the moments when I can't type fast enough, right? So I'm making notes so I don't forget things as I'm writing.
Well, and by the way, I don't know if you saw Michelle's eyes, but it's like, unlimited wardrobe. Oh, that would be just heaven.
It really would. It really would, especially for free. Oh man.
Why
You
not,
don't
right?
even have to go through actually putting it on, taking it off. It's just
Yep, instantaneous, right?
Yeah.
That would be fun.
And I did want to ask you, because you obviously do a lot of research behind everything that you do, because you want to get to it, the facts that are there. You want to make sure you get those right. But so I know you've studied AI quite a bit. I saw a thing just the other day of a lady that is an AI robot, and she was actually like the full body robot, and he was standing there talking to her, and her lips were moving and all that kind of stuff. Is AI happening that fast, and should we all be scared?
It is coming, very quickly. The thing that will probably stand in the way of it coming faster is probably the limitation of the machines it has to work on. The technology itself is going to be able to do some incredible things, but probably not on your home computer as quickly as, Department of Defense computers or some other, supercomputers. But the other thing that's probably going to slow AI down is, if you don't know this, is the amount of energy it consumes just to do queries. It requires, like, whole warehouses full of servers to run these queries, and they consume an awful lot of energy just to cool those machines, to keep them at 68 degrees. And so that's the other thing that's probably going to slow us down, is just figuring out where we're going to store and generate enough electricity to run these machines. So but what's called singularity is when all the AI intelligence becomes superior to our own and aware of its own existence. And there's many experts who are saying before 2040, the machines will have self-awareness. They will have singularity. So our lifetimes, everyone who's sitting on this interview right now, we will see it.
From your mouth to God's ears. I'm hoping to hear. So, but the interesting thing about AI and all of those things is it is coming along, but it's like everything else. It comes down to dollars and cents. If it's too expensive to operate, it's going to retard the growth, I would think, until they figure out a way to power it more cheaply. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, I would say so. And in the story, Ziggy is not your off-the-shelf AI. There are some off-the-shelf AIs in the book who don't function like she does, and her origin's a mystery. And in book 2, Tree of Liberty, we go a step further to explore her origins, that she is not a product of a commercial company, that she might be the product of a foreign country, trying to create some kind of counterintelligence or some kind of, counter weapon. And so then you start to explore how powerful Ziggy is, because she has access to things that, a normal computer would not have access to. And that's where it gets fun, because you can explore that. But I think that also brings to mind that there will be levels of AI, and there's a level of AI that we have access to now. That means there's probably a level of AI that some folks in Washington, D.C. or Los Alamos or, San Francisco, they probably have a different level that we haven't quite seen yet, that's probably scaring them already. In fact, the inventor of AI is terrified. I think you've seen the interviews where, they say it's the worst thing they've ever invented. It's like the people who invented this stuff said that they're scared for humanity because of what it's going to be capable of. That means they've seen versions we haven't, and it scares them.
I think the same thing happened with the nuclear bomb or the atomic bomb, that the person who developed that was like, oh crap, what have I done?
Yeah, that Oppenheimer, that's a great movie, by the way. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it.
Yes, indeed. Well, I got to ask you, because you are so learned in so many things that, and you've done a lot of research. Does the research always end up in the story?
No, not always. And in fact, I think even in Bull Moose, I probably, there's a point in the book where I think I go into too much backstory with some, previous elections. I think it slows it down just a little. And maybe in a future edit, we'll take a look at that. But there's definitely, there was a whole scene about William Henry Harrison and the curse of Tippecanoe, the election of 1840 and the inauguration of 1841, that had to cut because it just was like too much of a divergence from the main story. I had a great time writing this story and doing all this research about how John Tyler had become president and all the machinations around that. It ultimately didn't go in the story. There's now just, this simple reference to, him becoming president, even though he hadn't taken the oath. He was the vice president. And so he was essentially president before he agreed to do it. But yeah, there's definitely research that goes in. I have 3 books on my shelf about the Bull Moose Party that I read, and a lot of cool speeches by Teddy Roosevelt. I wanted to put the actual platform of the Bull Moose Party in the book so readers could see that, like, look, these are ideas that are 120 years old, and they're just as relevant today as they were in 1912. And so that's where I feel like, at times, you put a lot of time, get excited about research and do a lot of writing. It ultimately may not land in the book you're writing now, but it could come down the road. So hang on to it. Never delete anything.
I'm just curious. Have you ever thought about applying to go on to Jeopardy?
Yes, and I would be terrified. I would be terrified. Because I would get there and the board would be like 3 categories about sports and 2 categories about like some period of time I'd have no idea about, and I would, be negative $3,000, and I wouldn't even make it to Final Jeopardy. So
Oh, I think you do a lot better than that.
yeah.
It's kind of like, because of that, the saying, Tippecanoe and Tyler too. That was a presidential slogan for Tyler when he was running for office, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's how they joined. The Whig Party joined the Democratic John Tyler into a ticket. This was the second Whigs a chance at trying to run a presidential campaign. They were a fractured party in 1840 or in 18. Get my years not. But anyway, the first time, 1838 or 36, they were fractured. In 1840, they came together as a singular national Whig party by putting William Henry Harrison, this war hero, with John Tyler, and who was a Democrat, and that's how they ended up beating the Democratic Party at the time.
One of the things that I think is such a tragedy is when they did away with powdered wigs. If they still had powdered wigs today, I could be.
You would be set.
I would
You'd be
I
good.
would be happy instead. Because if you ever thought in those old pictures of guys in the powdered wigs that they actually were like bald or so, and they didn't even look like themselves, and
Yes.
all that kind of
It
stuff.
makes you wonder, like, what a strange choice, the fashion choice that was, but hey, to each their own. I don't know. In 100 years, you might wear fake mustaches, and you'll be ahead of the game in 5 years if that's the next trend.
Yeah, I told Rochelle when she commented about my mustache one time, and I said, my mustache is older than you are by like 20 years. So, by the way, we're talking with Michael Fedor. He's the author of Tree of Liberty. It came out in November. It's doing really, really quite well, and it is a political thriller. And with what's happening today and what's going to happen in the future, I'm really. We need to take our last break, and Rochelle, would you lead us into the break? And then when we come back, I want to ask you about the future. Where the hell are we going, Rochelle?
Well, thank you everybody for listening in. We have Michael Fedor on here today talking about how he wrote his book and what he's been through his life and experiences with politics. So if you're curious on more about him, go to michaelfedorbooks.com. Is that correct, Michael?
It
Okay,
is.
michaelfedorbooks.com. And go check him out. Maybe learn something and get some inspiration to write for yourself. We'll be right back.
And get a free book. Get a free book. Get it. You can get a free book. We'll be right back.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Michael, I play that commercial because I've never texted anybody in my life asking them out for a date. And they said, oh, sure, I'd love to go. I'm sure you're a good-looking guy. I'm sure that happens to you all the time. Of course, you're probably married.
I am happily married. Yes, absolutely. So, no, don't text and drive. That's bad. Bad news.
Yes, it's a bad thing. So you've delved into the future a little bit, and I would really love to get, because I was just thinking about it during the break, that if we were to do the Bull Moose Party and we were to take the less progressive of the Democratic Party and the more progressive of the Republican Party and put that together as a party, I think it would be more successful than either the current generation of Republicans or Democrats. What do you think?
I do. I think we're just lacking leaders to kind of take that leap, to leave their parties to do it. I think that I think the more these two parties that are in control right now continue to grow apart and make more people feel like they're not being heard. A majority of voters today don't belong to either major party. We lose sight of that at times. Even though they vote for their candidates, I think it does present us an opportunity to have a third conversation. It doesn't have to be centrist. In the book, we talk about being multidimensional, the bull moose, looking at it not just as a line of moving left and right, but looking up and down and forward and back. If you look at political dialogue as a sphere, not a line, think of how much further we can go. And I think that's where the Bull Moose Party in the book is trying to explore, as being a reform-minded party and one that is looking to expand prosperity and expand safety in a time in 20 years in the future where things are much more violent. The world is a much more dangerous place. And U.S. dominance is not a given. There is a multinational relations that are much more complex than today, and puts the U.S. in a position where it just can't dominate on every conversation.
I'm looking forward to reading your book. I think it's awesome. It came out in November. It's called Tree of Liberty, and then the first book was called, I forget it.
What It Takes to Kill a Bull Moose. Yep.
What It Takes to Kill a Bull Moose, and
The Senate
get
is the free one. Yep.
Yep, he's that's the free one. Go to his website, which again, Rochelle is
michaelfedorbooks.com, and if you put in the code positive, you can get the book for 99 cents.
That's right.
well done.
So
Done.
some people are
Thanks.
asking me, like, why should they read political thriller right now? And they feel like they feel over politics at the moment because it just has been so disappointing, or it has been so disruptive. And I would say to them, you should read my political thriller because it is more hopeful. It is also terrifyingly plausible. You're going to read the story and say, oh my goodness, I could see this stuff happening any day now, or this reads a lot like what happened last week, or next week. But what's driving it are some really great characters you want to believe in. And that's the thing that I think reaches beyond the moment we're in, where we feel let down by so many of our political leaders who don't feel like they're on that top tier we talked about at the beginning, where they really genuinely, authentically care about you. And in the story, we have Jackson Piper and Valerie Lawrence, who are two genuinely good people, authentic people who are trying to make a difference. They actually have to be convinced to run because the political system has become so ugly. And I think the main question, what's the stakes are for Jackson, is what does he have to give up, or what does he have to risk to try to save the country he loves? And soon becomes the question of, will all these risks be worth it? Will he be able to win? Will he actually be able to change anything? And that's a question I think a lot of really great leaders struggle with now. And a lot of them take a pass on being involved. And that's the lesson I want my readers to come out of the story, is if they just disengage because it makes them feel bad, then the bad guys win and the bad girls win, because that disengagement, well, it allows the people who are not turned off by all the violence and the rhetoric to continue to control the board. And so I think that people who have a positive mindset, who want to see a better world and want to see a better country, you don't have to belong to political parties and you don't have to necessarily run for office, but you got to find a way to stay engaged and not be turned off by it. And I think, escaping to the moose world might be a good place to live for a little bit, and follow Jackson Piper and the Bull Moose Party and start to ask, what if? What if there was another way? What if there was a third party? What if there were more choices than two in my local elections? And that might give us all some hope, and some positive belief that there are better days ahead, even if right now you feel like the world is pretty lost.
Well, and we can't go back, so all we have is going forward, and so you can't make something. I'm not going to go there, but I really appreciate, Michael, that you are here. Rochelle, you've been a little quiet. Have you got any questions that you'd like to ask Michael from your perspective, specifically about writing and writing your story?
Honestly, I think one of my first questions, it's kind of built itself just listening and learning on your methods and how you do what you do. But from going from a teacher and being a leader and being through all of that and being able to turn into something positive, did you see that there was a shift in your writing, and kind of when you started to figure out your sequence and how things worked and why you did what you did through being able to teach and lead other people, and then doing it then with yourself with writing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a couple ways this comes into play. First, the first things I was writing were very autobiographical. And I think that once you write enough, you write your first 50 or 100,000 words, and you get to your next 100,000 words, you'll start pulling away from the autobiographical sketches where the heroes look like you and the villains are the people you don't like.
Mm.
And you will allow yourself to write characters that are true inventions, and you will put a little bit of yourself in the villain, and you'll put a little bit of yourself in the hero, and you'll put a little bit of yourself in this other character. And I think that the thing that I had to break the bad habit was, because I worked in politics and because I had been a candidate and a leader, I was always afraid of offending people. And so I was being too safe with what I was writing. And when I gave myself permission to take more risk, to put a little more edge into it, to not be afraid to offend, because if you try to talk to everyone, you will talk to no one. In writing, you are ultimately writing for an audience that shares your worldview, and so it's okay to write to those folks. And for the folks who don't share your worldview and don't want to read your fiction, that's okay. They can read somebody else. And then I would also say, don't write alone. It's really important to have an editor, particularly a developmental editor at the start. I was lucky to have Thea Newell on What It Takes to Kill a Bull Moose, and Joshua M. Coffey on Tree of Liberty. And I think they can provide really helpful feedback to you on what's working, what's not, what scenes are missing. Thea's feedback early on was, I see the stakes for Jackson, but I don't believe in him enough. So I need earlier scenes of him as a human where I get to really get excited about him and believe in him, so that when his flaws come through, I give him permission to have flaws because I'm already invested in him. So that was feedback I needed from another living, breathing human being that AI can't give you when you're trying to write a manuscript. So don't write alone. And the other thing that I would say was, I was convinced in writing my first book that folks reading my stuff hated it and thought I was terrible. They just couldn't bring the courage up in themselves to tell me it was bad because there's long gaps. And finally, they came back with their feedback and they're like, oh, this is great. No, this really works. And you definitely have the thriller edge to your writing and the cliffhangers at the end of the chapters. Here's the things that could make it better. And so if you give yourself the permission to take the risk to write, you got to make the voice of doubt be quieter than the voice of belief and the voice of confidence in yourself. If that voice can have more air and more volume in your own head, then you will be able to continue to write. And every writer goes through those periods of doubt. Even James Patterson, I'm sure, when he's writing, or others, it's they've been writing numerous bestsellers, but I guarantee they still sit down and write, this is crap, and throw it in the trash. So you've got to give yourself that permission to believe in yourself. And I think that having people around you to tell you the truth, what's working, what's not, is really important.
I couldn't agree more, because in my world, it's the same darn thing, because I'm sitting here in my studio, in my room, by myself, talking to you and a million other people, but I don't know. You don't know whether you're being appreciated, whether or not they're turning you off, you just don't know. And until you get that feedback. And then did you do a happy dance when you got the feedback?
I did. And I also, the very first time I got a review, I was in a cold sweat. I saw this review pop up on one of my books and I thought, oh my goodness, this is a stranger. This is someone I don't even know. And so when people write me to tell me that what they loved about the book, or they write me to tell me what they don't like about the book, I still love getting both of those emails, because both pieces of feedback make me a better writer. If people just tell me that I'm great, then I'm going to miss those opportunities to get better. And I think that's what's really key about great writing, is growth. And so people have given me feedback of what they feel like could be better about the story. And so I take that into account and try not to get in my own head about it. But if you're going to write, you have to be someone who has a little bit thicker skin, not the type of thick skin you need to run for office. That's kind of like leather, but you can't be easily bruised if you're going to do creative writing for commercial viability.
I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about the writing process and yourself. You're a really gifted guy. And I think, you know what? I think you should run for office. I'd vote for you.
Thanks, Kevin, but those days are over. I appreciate it, though.
Well, maybe Rochelle, when she gets a little older, we'll vote for her.
That's right. We'll run her campaign.
But I want to thank you both for being here, and Michael again. His website is michaelfedorbooks.com. That's FEDOR books.com. And there's a free, did I say free? Yes, free book. And so go there, and you can also reach out to him, and you can contact him. And I want to thank you so much for being here, young man.
It's my pleasure, Kevin. Rochelle, thanks for the opportunity. This was wonderful. Thanks to your listeners for listening to my story.
It's a great story. And next time you're on, because you are coming back, I'm going to ask you, are you optimistic or pessimistic? But we'll save that for another time.
That sounds good. And I'll be back. Like I said, book 3 will be out this year in 2025. So I'm just going to keep writing and keep growing my audience. That's why I'm doing this.
And we'll be there for that release as well. Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin@kmmedia.pro.